I got to know the people in the Midwest League.
Yeah.
And in 1993, they were in need of a lawyer, and so I got a call on a Saturday morning, and they said, "Are you interested in being the lawyer for the Midwest League?" And I said, "Yeah."
Wow.
So they hired me as their lawyer, and I was the lawyer from 1993 until basically Major League Baseball took it over in 2020.
Ooh. And
was the president of the Midwest League for the last 5 of those years, which was an incredible experience.
Wow, that is neat. You heard that there. That's South Bend lawyer Dick Nussbaum mentioning how incredible of an experience it was serving as the Midwest Baseball League's general counsel and then president. More of that later, but first. Welcome to Round the Bend Now and Then, a podcast that shines a light on the South Bend and Mishawaka areas past and present. Through interviews with local business owners, leaders, and community members, our listeners and I learn together about all of the great people and great things going on in our community, as we also learn about South Bend and Mishawaka's history and how intertwined our past is with our present. If you've kept up with the local South Bend area news lately, you've probably heard that the South Bend Cubs, led by owner Andrew Berlin, are investing $40 to $50 million into Four Winds Field, with plans to build a second deck to increase seating and build more suites. That is on top of the millions that he already has invested in the stadium. The attendance of the Single-A Cubs has hit 300,000, which is more than some AAA teams. What you might not know or don't quite remember, that there was a time in the early 2000s when we almost lost professional baseball in South Bend. The history of professional baseball in South Bend has experienced many highs and many lows. It's such an intriguing story that I felt it must be shared. In this episode, I meet with longtime South Bend lawyer Dick Nussbaum. Dick shares his memories of professional baseball's journey in South Bend, as he has played an integral role in its growth here, but also in the growth of the Midwest League as a whole. The Midwest League is the Single-A minor league professional baseball league that the South Bend teams have been a part of. Dick formerly served as the South Bend City's attorney in the late 1980s in Mayor Joe Kernan's administration. In that role, he began what would become an over 30-year relationship with professional baseball in South Bend. As city attorney, he was in charge of handling the relationship between the city, the minor league franchise, and its owners. In the early 1990s, he became the general counsel for the Midwest League, and in 2014, he became the Midwest League's president, along with his general counsel duties. So, the man knows his baseball, and he knows the ins and the outs of the relationships between a city and its sports franchise. He is passionate about baseball and also passionate about our city. By the end of this episode, you'll know why Dick should be proud and hold his head high for all of his work in helping minor league baseball in South Bend thrive. Here is my interview with Dick Nussbaum. Again, thank you for coming on. Truly appreciate it. The Cove, I just call it the Cove. You know, it's Four Winds Field, Kovaleski Stadium. That place has been a part of my life since mid 80s when I was 8 or 9 years old. And then it opened in 88. So we're 10 years old. And I just remember going to baseball games there with the mitt and glove and with Eastside Little League. And then my early 20s, we'll talk about it later, but the Dollar Mondays. And then now the past 10 years with my own family. Yeah. To me, it's a special place. And so I'm glad that you're down here just to share some of your experiences with it all. And before we dive into it, just want to share a little bit about yourself, just your background, just a quick summary of your career.
Sure. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, and graduated in 1970 from Moon High School, and played baseball there. Actually played with Bob Davey, the former head coach of the Fighting Irish. He was 2 years younger than I was, so I played against Bob in Little League and with Bob in high school in American Legion ball. And then I came to Notre Dame and was fortunate enough to play ball there. I graduated with a degree in English.
Oh, okay.
And then went on to go to the law school at Notre Dame.
Right.
Met my wife during my senior year at Notre Dame. She went to St. Mary's and grew up just down the street from here.
Okay.
And decided we wanted to get married and start a family here. So I've been living in South Bend, Indiana for a long time. Since I graduated from law school, which is in 1977.
Wow. Goodness gracious. That's 1 year before I was even born.
Yeah.
You played baseball in high school, baseball college, so baseball has been in your blood the whole time, huh?
Yeah, well, my goal in life was to be a Major League Baseball player.
Okay.
And I didn't quite make it that far, but I certainly did better than a lot of people were able to do. Yeah. Playing Division I baseball was quite an experience.
Yeah.
Played against Mike Schmidt, who was with Ohio University. Steve Swisher, who's Nick Swisher's father, again, Ohio University. Played against some really good players. Marty Cornejo, who pitched for the Mets. I played against some really good competition.
That's cool.
And I was able to leverage my experience in baseball, my legal career in working with the city, and then becoming the Midwest League lawyer and then president.
Wow. At the time, you never know where you're going to head, you know? How cool is that? Dick always has had a love and a passion for baseball, and he mentioned leveraging that into his law career as well. We'll get into more of that later, but next, we talk about what pretty much are the only few years that he wasn't directly involved with Coveleski Stadium or minor league baseball in South Bend during the construction of the stadium. My listeners recall a previous episode with former South Bend Mayor Roger Parent, where we go more in depth with the construction of it. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, it's a good one, and I highly encourage you to do so. Before your involvement with the at the time, the South Bend White Sox and Stanley Coveleski Stadium, you had lived in South Bend for a good 10 years, 7, 8, 9 years at that time.
Right.
What do you remember about when Mayor Parent had first introduced it to the city and everything? Just what do you remember about that time?
Well, I look, Mayor Parent was not a baseball person.
Right.
I've told him this. I said, Mayor, you don't know whether a baseball's stuffed or blown up. I said, but you had tremendous vision and courage because it was very unpopular.
Right. Okay.
And in a certain respect, South Bend and Mayor Parent were in the right place at the right time.
Okay.
But there were any number of steps that could have stopped the whole thing.
Right.
And he describes that best in his book.
He does.
So I don't want to rehash that. But I remember it being very very controversial.
Yeah.
I, of course, as a baseball person, thought it was great.
Of course.
I had no vision for what they were going to do.
Wow. Yeah.
But I watched it because my first law office was on the 23rd floor of what's now the Liberty Tower facing south.
Oh, wow.
So I watched the whole construction
wow.
as it progressed. And I was just blown away by what they were doing.
Speaking of the construction there and the location, hindsight's 2020, but there was also controversy about where to put the darn stadium.
Yeah. People thought it should be put out near the toll road out in the county. And at that time, downtown stadiums weren't really in vogue. So I applaud Mayor Parent and his administration for, sticking to the plan, so to speak.
Right.
Because it was not put up in an area of town that people would have picked as number one. But what he wanted to do was to anchor the southern part of our downtown.
Right. Yeah.
And it did. It has.
Yeah.
And it took a while, for development to take place, but it's just taken off. Unbelievable. And the momentum continues.
I love it. The original owners, the Staleys, purchased it for an expansion team for $40,000, I think.
That's right. And that's one of those things that people, I don't think really knew about. It's not well known. But the Midwest League was expanding from 12 to 14 teams.
Okay.
And they paid $40,000 to the Midwest League and were granted the franchise. They held on to the franchise for 2 years, perhaps. Mayor Parent and the city agreed to build the stadium. And I don't know the details as to how the Staleys got involved with Eric Marganow and Jay Acton, who bought from them. But Jay Acton and Eric Marganow paid $400,000.
Amazing.
For that franchise.
$40,000 to $400,000.
So that's making 10 times your money
within a couple of years.
Yeah, and really very little investment.
Very little. But that was a sign of things to come, though, of owners who didn't live in our city, right?
Well, there's people out there that have vision. And I got to give Marganow and Acton credit that they understood that minor league baseball with Bull Durham was gaining some momentum, and of course the stadium was pretty much done. Yeah. By the time they got involved, it was probably a year out, maybe. So they knew it was a reality,
right?
The not talking to Marganow and Acton was a real interesting strategy by Mayor Parent.
Hey.
And I got a different perspective on that. Although again, I admire his courage for that, and he was absolutely right. He had what they needed more than
vice versa,
more than what he needed with them. And obviously it came together. But the model that ownership group was similar to what the Staleys. They were making an investment.
Yeah.
Buying low and selling high.
Right.
And Marganow and Acton held it for 2 years. And they also owned a team in the New York Penn League in Welland, Ontario. And those two clubs, the South Bend Club and the Welland Club, were sold to Alan Levin in 1990.
Only a few years later,
like 2 years. Marganow and Acton operated a team for 2 years. Acton never came.
That's what you had said.
Never made it to the stadium.
Unbelievable.
He's a New York literary publisher. He wrote books. He published books. I think he's still living. I never met him.
Wow.
I never met the man. I met Eric many, many, many times, but they sold it for $4 million. And most of that $4 million was allocated to the South Bend franchise.
Wow. Think of that. The Staleys were the original owners of the franchise in South Bend, the South Bend White Sox, and they purchased the franchise for $40,000. They talked the city into building a new stadium for them, and then they sell it to Eric Marganow and Jay Acton for $400,000 a few years later, 10 times their original investment. Then only a few years after that, those two sell the team to Alan Levin for $4 million, 10 times their original investment. Coming up, you'll hear how steep the learning curve was for Dick when he was appointed the city attorney in Mayor Joe Kernan's administration. In about 1988, Joe Kernan's elected mayor. Joe Kernan starts serving as mayor, and he appoints you the city attorney.
Right.
And, man, aside from the baseball team, that alone is quite the job. Am I right?
Well,
or was your main role specific? Really?
No, I was.
You did it all?
I was, baseball was one component of it. Of course, it was a component that I
passionate about,
really enjoyed. But I had a big learning curve. Huge learning curve.
Yeah. Talk to me.
I knew nothing about the business of minor league baseball.
Right.
Really didn't know that the major leagues supplied and paid for the players.
Okay.
And, what Mayor Joe and I did was that really helped us and really helped me in my career is we went to the winter meetings in 1988 in Atlanta.
Okay.
And the reason why we did that was we felt that we had a unique asset here in South Bend.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything that we could to be known and to leverage what we had into everything it could be.
Yeah.
And a gentleman by the name of Pete Van Aken, who was the owner of the Peoria Chiefs, Pete showed us around to everybody at the winter meetings, and it was like for a baseball fan to go to the winter meetings was like dying and going to heaven, because you had all of the major league teams were there. You would run into Frank Robinson and Tony La Russa and Roland Heeman, and it was incredible. And so we made it a point from 1988 forward. I went to just about every winter meeting from that point forward.
Literally for your own professional development.
For my own professional development, and eventually
connections, networking.
And eventually, because I did that, and the mayor, of course, couldn't do it as much as I did, but he went on a couple of them with me. But I got to know the people in the Midwest League.
Yeah.
And in 1993, they were in need of a lawyer, and so I got a call on a Saturday morning, and they said, "Are you interested in being the lawyer for the Midwest League?" And I said, "Yeah." Wow. So they hired me as their lawyer, and I was the lawyer from 1993 until basically Major League Baseball took it over in 2020. Ooh. And was the president of the Midwest League for the last 5 of those years, which was an incredible experience.
Wow, that is neat. How cool is that? You're a lifelong baseball fan, former baseball player, you get into law, and you are asked to become the city attorney, and a large part of your responsibilities have to do with baseball. Then you immerse yourself in the business of it, and eventually you are the attorney and then president of a professional minor league baseball league. I asked Dick next about having out-of-town owners, and as you'll hear, one longtime out-of-town owner of the South Bend franchise pulled a sneaky move that about lost us professional baseball in South Bend. You had mentioned that Eric and Jay had sold it to Alan Levin for $4 million. So that was another 10-fold.
10 times. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
But then that's another out-of-town owner who ended up owning the team for quite a while.
He did.
From a city standpoint, you're kind of at the whim of whatever owner can come in and pay the most money that gets approved by the league. Am I right?
Yeah, it's a situation where we as a league, and I think minor league baseball as an industry, really thought local ownership was the right way to go.
Right.
And encouraged that, but we couldn't control that. And so Levin buys a team in 1990, and he owns it till 2006. And early on, he was involved. He was from Los Angeles.
Okay.
He would come to town, and the whole Pops at the Cove
fireworks
was his creation, which was really cool.
Absolutely.
And our attendance was really phenomenal for minor league baseball.
Yeah.
So it was generating a lot of cash for him. And lots of owners will be very prudent with their cash, and he used the cash to expand into other areas. And use the model for South Bend, that is, get a city to build a stadium.
Yep.
And the town will go nuts and will do very well. He moved the Welland franchise to Erie, Pennsylvania, and they became a Double-A franchise. Okay. So they built a new stadium there. Their success that's still a struggling franchise.
Yeah.
But he got involved with other things. So South Bend, his success in South Bend, and our supporting his franchise, was helping to support areas other than South Bend, Indiana. So beginning in the mid 90s, late 90s, and certainly in the early 2000s, the franchise, the ballpark, and everything was on the bad trajectory. It was going downhill. And he decided he was going to sell the team, and given what was happening at the time was not as valuable in South Bend as it would be somewhere else.
Yep.
And so he hooked up with a personal injury lawyer down in Marion, Illinois, that did a lot of asbestos litigation. Did very well. And it was, and to his credit, this lawyer, he wanted to bring professional baseball to his hometown, Marion, Illinois. And kind of under the radar, they negotiated a deal where Allen was going to sell it for probably around $7 million.
Okay.
But with a contingency that it be moved from South Bend. Mm-hmm. And we were at an all-star game in Peoria. Mm-hmm. And they broke ground for the stadium in Marion, Illinois. And at that time, Governor Blagojevich, I don't know if that
in Illinois,
rings a bell. Well, Governor Blagojevich was there with the groundbreaking. The state had paid in some money to help build it. And they're talking about the fact that the Midwest League was going to operate there.
Yeah.
We're at a meeting where all of the teams in the Midwest League are together. It's in the Peoria paper. And
you guys didn't know?
No one knew.
Really?
No one knew. So that raised a lot of red flags at that point, because Marion, Illinois is not in our footprint. It's closer to Paducah, Kentucky than it is to anywhere in Illinois, frankly. And so the league was not happy. Minor League Baseball was not happy. The city of South Bend was not happy either,
I'm sure,
because they had supported Levin really, really well. So it didn't get approved. The move didn't get approved. So the deal fell apart, but the city had to find a local owner. And that's when Joe Kernan came in, when he left the governor's office and was able to get a lot of local investors to help him buy the team at a premium.
Yeah. You heard him say, buy the team at a premium. I wanted to point that out because next, you'll hear that buying the team at a premium, more than what it was worth, and then losing money on it, literally saved professional baseball in South Bend.
The team was not worth what they paid.
And so,
but it was worth it to pay it to keep it in South Bend.
That's kind of what I was going to say. So it's almost, I couldn't think of the word for it. Not bittersweet, but they knew that it was going to be a tough road to hoe, right?
There's different ways that you can serve your community.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
You can run for public office and serve in public office, or you can do, we just lost Ernie Racklin.
Yeah.
She was a private sector person.
Absolutely.
But her family and herself have done magnificent things for this community.
Yeah.
And what Joe Kernan and his investors did was a magnificent thing for this community.
That's a great way to put it.
I like to say that there's nobody that gave more to this community than Joe Kernan. But him keeping the team here, in my view, was one of the most important things he did in his life, because he kept it alive when it was dying for Andrew Berlin to come along.
I got chills right now. I mean, we'll get into Andrew Berlin, but you're exactly right. I mean, if Joe Kernan and his folks didn't come in, I mean, we probably wouldn't have a team now. Right?
Well, we wouldn't. I mean, I know we wouldn't.
Yeah.
All right, because the league and minor league baseball backed up South Bend and gave us a chance to keep it in South Bend. But we had to take advantage of that chance.
Yeah, yeah.
Because when other owners are making decisions, they're making decisions in part upon what's best for them too.
Definitely.
All right, and they want to be able to show that the value of what they own is substantial. And so, even though they didn't really like what was going on, if South Bend wasn't going to support the team, then it was going to go somewhere else. Because if that happened to them in their particular cities, they'd be trying to do the same thing.
You're darn right. Definitely.
Yeah.
Man, I remember the time, the era. I mean, I was younger. I just started teaching in my career and that time frame.
Right.
So I was a young adult and everything. And it's just, I didn't realize at the time, like, man, how close we were,
Well, people really don't know.
It's just amazing.
It was touch and go for a while.
It is truly amazing.
Right.
Again, I just can't believe how close we were to losing professional baseball in South Bend. And Dick's words about what Joe Kernan and his investment group did by purchasing the team, knowing that they'd take a loss just to keep baseball in South Bend, are beautiful. And we should forever be grateful to Joe Kernan and his investors for literally saving professional baseball in South Bend. We would not have what we have today if it weren't for them. The sale to Andrew Berlin.
Yeah.
How did that all go down?
Well, Joe knew he had to sell the team.
Okay.
It was just not sustainable.
Of course.
Okay. I mean, they just didn't have the capital. They expended all their capital to buy the team.
Yes.
And, any good business person will tell you that there's the opportunity cost, but then there's the operational costs. Okay. Yeah. And they were on a shoestring and people weren't coming. And it was, we'd lost our momentum.
Yeah, I think that's the word.
We lost our momentum and we were down to drawing a little over 100,000 fans a game. And that was the announced intent. So a lot of those people didn't show up. Ticket might have been sold, but
they didn't show up to get all the concessions.
Yeah, so in the ballpark, there just wasn't enough money there to keep the ballpark up. And luckily we got some help from the state. And there were some improvements that Joe made to the ballpark. The 360 concourse was put in place.
Right.
And there were some other things, a better scoreboard, and there were some positives there. But Andrew came in, and Joe, I don't know how they met, but he was the person that got him to come.
Oh, okay.
And I think I met Andrew the first time he came to South Bend. There was probably 300 people in the ballpark.
Okay.
And
so he went to a game.
Oh yeah. And so Joe told him it's friends and families night at the ballpark. So that's why there was only 300 friends and family. So and Andrew tells that story better than I do. But he thought about it. He wasn't really going to pull the trigger, but Joe kind of talked him into it.
Really? I didn't know that.
They developed a very nice relationship.
Okay.
As Joe does with everybody he meets. And Andrew did it. And the thing about Andrew is, he's from Chicago. He's not from South Bend. But he's been to South Bend more than most people that live in South Bend. Okay? I mean, he's here all the time.
Last year I was just in a bathroom actually using the restroom at a urinal.
Right.
In walks the owner of the team and right next to me.
Well, and that's an interesting story too, because he is an attention to detail kind of guy, and he wanted our restrooms to be the cleanest restrooms anywhere. They are. And they have a video that they show their employees as to how to clean a restroom.
Wow. So he might have been inspecting when he came in.
He does inspect. He does walk around. He goes up to and buys merchandise or food and evaluates the people there.
Hey.
Some of them don't recognize them. Some of them do. But he's a hands-on owner.
I love it.
I can tell you, based upon my experience, there's a lot of people that were very successful in minor league baseball when they bought a team and moved it somewhere else and had a new stadium. So it went from 0 to 100 because of that. We were at 0.
Right.
And he came in and accepted 0.
Yes.
And made 0 100 at the same place. It was a reconstruction.
Yeah.
And no one has done it as successful as he has. No one. I defy anybody to give a better example.
It's one of my questions.
Yeah.
In your experiences around the league, has anybody had this quick of a turnaround? No,
absolutely not. I mean, to go from, look, we were at 100,000
100,000.
and he was at, we had drawn, the most we ever drew was in 1994 was 258,000 people, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
But from that point, it just went
downhill.
He got it back to that within a year or two.
God,
okay. And then, there's lots of other things he did. He got the naming rights to the ballpark, which, well, that's money that he could, that's the operating capital. That's the things where he can make things better.
That's the operating capital that Joe and his group just didn't
have it. And so what's he use that money for? When you go to the ballpark, there's something new there all the time.
Almost every time you go. Yeah.
And so he makes it better, uses the money. He keeps it in the project.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it's not his ballpark. It's the city's ballpark.
Right.
So all the improvements that he's making inure to the benefit of the city.
Yes.
But he's making these so that more people will want to come to the ball games.
Darn right. Anyone who has attended a South Bend Cubs game over the past several years will tell you that it is truly a great place to take your family, hang out with friends, and enjoy an evening. And we have owner Andrew Berlin to thank for that. And I had no clue that Joe Kernan had to talk him into buying the team. Next, we talk about how different minor league baseball has become since Major League Baseball took it over.
We had the last All-Star game of the Midwest League. They don't have All-Star games anymore, which is too bad. I think that's a horrible decision by Major League Baseball, but
is what it is.
Nobody asked me anymore. But in 2019, we had the All-Star game here, and it was the All-Star game of all All-Star games.
Okay.
I hope you had an opportunity to go.
I didn't.
But it was phenomenal, and he used it as a way to show off our city. We had Ryan Sandberg come in for a luncheon, and he spoke. It was a celebration of baseball.
I love it.
It was unbelievable. Yeah. And, we had COVID and minor league baseball has completely changed its operating system. And we'll see how that works out. But the thing that the people in this community, it hasn't changed. When you went to the games in 2019, you go to the games in 2023, it's really the same experience.
Even though the whole structure of
there's so much
minor and Major League Baseball is so much that
has changed.
Yeah.
And Major League Baseball basically is taking control of everything.
Yep.
And so your future is in their hands.
Okay.
So you darn well better perform. And Andrew performs, but he also has, he owns part of the Cubs. So he's part of the Major League system,
right?
Which is huge for us.
Has to be huge.
Yeah. Some other communities don't have that.
Right.
There were 160 teams when I was president. Now there's 120. So there were 42 cities that were affiliated with Major League teams that are no longer affiliated with Major League teams.
Wow.
Our King County team, which is in Chicago, probably the largest market in America.
Wow.
For minor league baseball. They lost their team. They got caught up in some things but
that's crazy.
So there's no guarantees as you know.
And it's I'm in education, and when our city has to close a school, it hurts the community.
Absolutely. And
to lose a team like that, it hurts. And so it's also amazing how close we were to losing a team too. But
that's right. And as Joe used to say, if we lost our team, we'd have the best high school facility in America.
We chuckle at that, but it's true.
Yeah.
Aww.
And the fact of the matter that we have a professional sports franchise in South Bend, Indiana, makes us eligible for state assistance under the Professional Sports Development Fund.
All right. Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah. And that came into being in 1997. And I actually I was still city attorney then with Steve Lickey.
Yeah.
And we went down and testified in support of South Bend's being included in that.
Yep.
And that was a red letter day for us.
Okay.
And we have a lot of people to thank for that. Pat Bauer was our representative then. And he was very, very influential down there. And Indianapolis wanted to build their new basketball arena. Remember, they had Market Square.
Yeah,
and they built what was called
Fieldhouse at the time.
Well, that this professional sports development funding is how they did that.
Okay.
And so Pat Bauer said, well, if it's good enough for Indianapolis, it's good enough for South Bend. Fort Wayne got in. Richmond, Indiana got in. Evansville got in because they had a professional team at the time that was their facility was owned by the school system down there.
Okay.
Gary eventually got in. Kokomo got in at some point, but that generated a lot of money that the city could use for city projects. The most important of which is to make sure you keep your professional sports.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
so if you don't have that, you're not eligible.
Right.
And so what is really exciting for the community is the fact that Andrew is planning a major renovation. I mean, this is a quantum leap renovation. That's going to be in the neighborhood of $40 to $50 million.
Unbelievable.
And all of that money is going to come from this professional sports development. And the way that works is there's when you work for the school system and they send you your paycheck, a part of that is your state income taxes.
Correct.
And instead of those state income taxes that you pay going downstate, it stays here.
I see. Okay.
And so there's certain eligible areas
I see.
Within the city so for instance, all the city of South Bend employees, their state income taxes are captured. When you go to the ballpark and you buy a hat or whatever, food, and you pay sales tax, which would otherwise go to the state, that stays
Some of that
here.
is captured.
That stays here. So we can capture $5 million a year. For 20 years. That's $100 million.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
And it's all because we have a professional sports franchise in South Bend. So a good chunk of that's going to be used at the ballpark, but a good chunk of it's going to be used for other city-owned venues. So I think the Century Center is going to be a beneficiary of that. The Morris, Howard Park, certain city venues will also benefit from it.
You mentioned the new work going on at Four Winds Field. What's the vision now? What's the ultimate 10 years from now? What are you thinking?
Well, first of all, we've got to understand that minor league baseball went from 160 to 120.
There's another cut coming.
There's another. I mean, no one says that, but right now there are 2 full season A leagues. It's what's called single A and high A. We're high A. That's 60 teams. The next cut's going to be, there's just going to be 1 full season A. So there'll be 90 teams. So there'll be 30 at AAA, 30 at AA, and 30 at single A. Now, there may be expansion coming up. So if Major League Baseball expands by 2 teams, then it'll be 32, 32, 32.
Yeah.
So we've got to do 2 things. Number one, there are facility standards that Major League Baseball has upped.
High expectations.
So there are cities that aren't going to be able to meet those.
Wow.
And if you don't meet it, you have the chance of losing your ballpark or your team. Your team. We're not going to have that problem. Okay. What Andrew's looking to do is not only to keep what we have, but to make us more attractive so that maybe we will elevate our classification to AAA. AA probably isn't going to work because of the geography. It's the Eastern League, the Southern League, and the Texas League. So it just doesn't work geographically. But AAA might.
What would that mean for our city with the AAA?
Well, I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, you go to a whole new level. There would not be any other city of our size with a AAA team.
That's what I'm going over in my head. I mean, we have 100,000 people. 200-something thousand altogether.
Yeah. And our attendance at 300,000, like I said, we outdraw a lot of AAA teams right now.
Wow.
What's going to happen is with the second deck that's going to be put on.
Correct.
There's going to be additional seats available so that the capacity with the berm seating, the standing room, everything, you can get about 8,000 people in there now. Adding an upper deck, you're probably going to be able to get 10 to 12,000. All right. 12,000 maybe. But let's say it's 10,000.
Yeah.
All right. So now all of a sudden there's 5,000 seats there, but we can get 8,000.
Right.
We're going to add more seats, and there's not only going to be more seats, there's going to be more group areas.
Okay.
So that companies can come out.
Right.
They'll have a lot of different options, And so instead of selling out at 5,000, if we sell out at 10,000, instead of drawing 300,000, now we're drawing 400,000, which there aren't a lot of AAA teams that draw 400,000. So, in the operational expense to the team at a AAA level is much greater because you fly. So all of a sudden, instead of buses, you've got planes.
Yeah.
So, but that's if we stay where we are, we're going to be great. Okay.
Yeah.
But it puts us. I've always been preached to my kids. You want to have choices.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Do what you have to do to make sure you have choices.
Yep.
And we're going to have choices.
Yep.
We're going to have choices, and people are going to, and look at our geography. We're 90 miles from Chicago's two teams. And we're not too far from a lot of other teams, frankly.
Right.
So, right now, Chicago has their own AAA team, both of the White Sox and the Cubs, but there may be other AAA teams out there, or there may be some shuffling around that happens.
Right.
But we don't get in that picture if we don't make these improvements.
Yeah. You almost, if you build it, they will come type deal.
Well, yeah. And that's what Mayor Kernan did.
The same thing then. Yeah.
He did the same thing then, and people said people won't come. Well, they came, right?
Darn right they did.
And they're still coming. And it's how many years since? 35 years.
Yeah.
And it's far better now than it was then. And it was really good then.
That would be something else if little old South Bend, Indiana has a AAA baseball team. And Dick is right about making sure that you always have choices. Next, we talk about the relationship between a city and its sports franchise. And Dick has learned up close and personal about that relationship.
I don't have a lot of fond memories of Alan Levin.
Yeah.
He was not a good person.
Really?
Way he treated the city was
bad.
The city was very good to him.
Yeah.
Very good to him. Because it's important, and I try to teach this to different communities that I might talk to. I did some work for Madison, Alabama, who built a beautiful ballpark down there. They've got a AA. They're right near Huntsville, Alabama, and great people down there. They built it's Toyota's big down there, so their ballpark's named after Toyota. They're the AA for the Angels, I think. But as a city, you have to make sure that your franchise can be successful. So there's some cities that make it so hard on their team.
Yeah.
You've got to look at it in a different way. The value that a city gets is not just financial. And you got to do the right thing financially.
Right.
I'm not saying you just give it away. You don't give it away.
Right.
But you can't make it so onerous that the team doesn't succeed.
Yep.
Because then you have a problem.
Their failure is your failure.
Well, you're gonna suffer the catastrophic results just as they are, and it's an interesting dynamic that you have as a community in terms of how you treat and I think we've got a really nice situation with Andrew here because he's put his money where his mouth is. You cannot argue with his skin in the game. He's got as much skin in the game as anybody in the country in their communities.
That's awesome.
And he thinks big. He thinks, he wants everything to be first class. And we all benefit from that.
You're darn right we do.
all benefit from that. And it was his personality and his track record, frankly, that convinced the state of Indiana to raise our cap on what we can capture to $2 million to begin with, and then to $5 million.
Now to $5 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, Andrew was a guy down there selling.
Wheeling and dealing and selling.
Right. And impressed Mayor Holcomb and Ryan Mishler, who is a tremendous representative for our community. It would not have happened without him.
Wow.
Maureen Bauer, Pat's daughter who grew up in this neighborhood just down the street from us right here. And Dave Nutskotsky, Jake Teska, bipartisan Republicans and Democrats.
Beautiful.
When people say things can't happen anymore,
it happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
And this is a primary example of it. We've got we've got good people representing us.
I love it. At that time, you're good friends with Joe Kernan in his administration, helping. Yeah. Was it a tightrope at that time when you were kind of working with the Midwest League and working with?
I've always had an interesting practice in the sense that I always had like a public component and a private component.
Okay.
I always had a private practice. And then when I first started practicing, I worked in the prosecutor's office.
Okay.
Now, those kinds of opportunities don't exist anymore, because if the prosecutor wants you to be full-time.
I see.
Joe Kernan wanted me to be city attorney. I said, I can't do it full-time. I can do it part-time.
I see. Okay.
And I did it part-time, but it's really full-time. So you have to understand that if you're going to do that, you just can't. You have to do it as if it's a part-time job. So there were a lot of hours and a lot of, God bless my wife that she
got the kids everywhere.
She did, she was the stay-at-home mom that really was an all-star in that regard and really supported what I was doing. So was it a tightrope? Yeah, it was tough, but it was great. I mean, the connections I made, the opportunities I had,
so neat,
were all as a result of the fact that I was, that Mike Barnes first as prosecutor and Joe Kernan as the mayor and lieutenant governor and governor gave me an opportunity to do things I never thought I'd ever be able to do.
That's all. It's beautiful. And again, you just don't know, and where your life's going to take you, and taking risks and saying yes to different things. Also, you could have said no. I mean, that
would have been a bad decision.
Would have been a damn bad decision. We wrap it up next when I ask Dick to share some things that he is proud of. First of all, you had to be damn proud of your work over these years. What are some of the things that you're just most proud of?
Well, look, I've been really lucky. Okay. First of all, I married way up over my, I'll kick my coverage, so to speak. But there have been people that have had faith in me, and given me chances. And I think what I'm most proud of is that I think those people, if you talk to them, would say that they trusted me and I didn't betray their trust.
Right.
Your integrity is the most important thing in life. And I've really tried hard to do that, while at the same time understanding it's not all about you.
No, right, I know.
And somebody else can do what you can do, and probably better. But when you get the opportunity, I think I've taken advantage of the opportunities that I've been provided. I'm getting, as my wife doesn't like me to say this, but I'm kind of in the seventh inning of my career. But if I look back, usually the eighth and ninth innings are the most important, and you can do a lot of really good things. So that's how I'm looking at it. But this is a great community. A lot of people have really contributed to my success. And I hopefully have contributed to some things. And I really think that keeping the ball club here in South Bend is an important marker in my life.
You're darn right.
And as I said, there were lots of people that were involved with this, but I could contribute to that. I was a singles hitter when I played ball. Okay. I got on base so somebody else can get
there
me
you
up.
go.
And so that's kind of how I am. I mean, I'm not going to hit the home run for you, but if you put me in the game, I'm going to contribute. And I think I've contributed.
And you're going to cross the plate right along with them.
Well, when I score a run, it's just like hitting a home run.
You're damn right. So, all right. Well, hey, I truly appreciate you coming down.
Well, thanks,
here.
Matt, for the opportunity. This is a great story that should be told.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Round the Bend Now and Then. A special thank you to Dick Nussbaum for sharing your journey with professional baseball in South Bend. You should hold your head up high and be absolutely proud for all of the work that you've put in to make our city a better place by making sure that baseball is a constant here. Folks, do me a favor. Leave a review on the podcast app that you listen to us on. Also, follow us on all of the socials. Twitter, @RoundTheBendPod, Facebook, Round the Bend Now and Then. If you want to email, you can reach out, roundthebend574@gmail.com. As always, please share the podcast with those who you feel would like it. Join us again next time as we learn more about South Bend and Mishawaka's Now and Then.